before we start, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you isn't just another celebrity scandal. This is the story of how Spain's entire legal system looked at DNA evidence, medical reports, and what seemed like an open and shut case, and then completely fell apart. And when I say fell apart, I mean 3 judges, experienced, respected judges, looked at a conviction and said, "This is so wrong, we're throwing it all out." But here's the thing that's going to mess with your head. They weren't saying the evidence was fake. They were saying it was contradictory. Stay with me on this one, because by the end of this video, you're going to question everything you think you know about how justice actually works. December 31st, 2022. Barcelona, Spain. While you were probably getting ready to kiss someone at midnight, inside one of the city's most exclusive nightclubs, events were unfolding that would end up tearing Spain's legal system in half. Sudden Nightclub. If you don't know it, think ultra-exclusive. Think the kind of place where champagne costs more than most people's rent. Think VIP sections that have VIP sections. 2:30 a.m. A 23-year-old woman. We'll call her Ana because Spanish courts don't release victim names. Walks into this place with 2 friends. They're young. They're out for New Year's. They probably have no idea they're about to become part of legal history. By 2:50, they've been invited to the Moat VIP area. You know how this works? Beautiful women get invited to tables with expensive bottles. Standard club dynamics. At 3:20. And remember this time, because investigators would later analyze every single minute. Ana and her friends approach table 6. And sitting at table 6, drinking champagne like he owns the place, is Dani Alves. 39 years old. World Cup winner. One of the most successful footballers in history. Worth millions. The kind of celebrity who doesn't wait in lines, doesn't get told no, and definitely doesn't expect to end up in handcuffs. But here's where it gets interesting. 3:42 a.m. Security cameras. And there are cameras everywhere in places like this. Capture Alves getting up and walking toward a door. Not just any door. The door to the most exclusive part of an already exclusive club. The private suite with its own bathroom. 2 minutes later, 3:44 a.m. Ana follows him through that door. Now, what happens in the next few minutes depends entirely on whose story you believe. And that's where this case gets absolutely insane. Because what comes out of this tiny bathroom isn't just 2 different versions of events. It's 2 completely different realities that somehow both have evidence supporting them. But we don't know any of that yet. Because for the next month, nothing happens. Here's something that's going to blow your mind. There was already a police report filed on December 31st. Same day. But it was dismissed. Just dismissed. Think about that. Whatever happened in that bathroom was reported to police that same night, and they basically said, nah, nothing to see here. But then February 2nd, 2023, more than a month later, Ana files a formal complaint. And suddenly, everything changes. Hospital clinic calls the examining judge. Medical reports start flying. Evidence gets collected. And investigators realize they might have missed something big. Really big. When Mossos d'Esquadra, that's Catalonia's police force, started investigating, they hit what seemed like an investigative jackpot. Medical examination. Ana has injuries. Real injuries. A 2-centimeter cut on her left knee with bruising that required treatment and left a permanent scar. But here's the kicker. Laboratory analysis of a buccal swab, that's a mouth swab, detects biological material, specifically smegma, and DNA testing links that material directly to Dani Alves. Let me be clear about what this means. In a he said, she said situation, investigators just got the equivalent of a smoking gun. Physical evidence, medical documentation, a clear timeline from security footage. January 2023, Alves gets arrested and held without bail, which, by the way, almost never happens to celebrities in Spain. The prosecution is probably thinking this is the easiest case they'll ever try. DNA evidence plus medical reports plus witness testimony? That's a prosecutor's dream. And for a while, it looked like they were right. February 22nd, 2024. After examining all the evidence, the DNA match, the medical reports, the witness testimony, the reconstructed timeline from security cameras, the Audiencia Provincial de Barcelona delivers its verdict. Guilty. For years and 6 months in prison. 150,000 euros in compensation, which Alves pays immediately. Probation orders that would follow him for years. The court's reasoning was straightforward. The physical evidence supported Anna's account. The medical evidence documented real injuries. The witness testimony was consistent with non-consensual contact. Case closed, right? Alves appeals, which everyone expected. In March 2024, he posts 1 million euros bail. 1 million. That's one of the highest bail amounts in Spanish legal history. He surrenders his passports, agrees to weekly check-ins, and waits while his lawyers prepare their appeal. Most people figured this was just going through the motions. Rich guy trying every legal avenue available. The conviction would stand, he'd serve his time, and that would be that. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. When the Tribunal Superior de Justicia de Catalunya, basically Spain's highest regional court, started reviewing this case, they didn't just rubber stamp the conviction. They actually watched the security footage, frame by frame, minute by minute, comparing what the cameras recorded with what witnesses said happened. And what they found wasn't just minor inconsistencies. According to 3 experienced judges, what they found were fundamental contradictions between witness testimony and visual evidence. Now pause and think about this for a second. We're not talking about the absence of evidence. We're talking about evidence that directly conflicts with other evidence. The DNA is still there. The medical reports are still valid. But the video footage? The video footage tells a completely different story about what happened before Anna and Alves entered that bathroom. Different enough that 3 judges, 2 women and 1 man, looked at this case and said, something is very, very wrong here. March 28, 2025. In a unanimous decision that sent shockwaves through Spain's legal community, the Tribunal Superior de Justicia de Catalunya did something that happens in less than 10% of criminal appeals. They threw out the entire conviction, not on a technicality, not because of procedural errors, but because they found the evidence too contradictory to support a criminal conviction beyond reasonable doubt. Let me read you what they essentially said. The complainant's testimony was insufficiently reliable when compared to other evidence, particularly the video footage. Think about what that means. 3 judges looked at DNA evidence, medical reports, and witness testimony that convinced a trial court to send someone to prison for 4.5 years, and said, we don't believe it. This wasn't about whether the evidence was real. This was about whether contradictory evidence could support certainty. And their answer was no. Here's what makes this case absolutely terrifying from a justice perspective. Both courts were looking at the same evidence. The trial courts saw DNA evidence that linked Alves to biological material found on Anna. They saw medical reports documenting real injuries. They heard witness testimony under oath. The appeals court saw video footage that contradicted key elements of that testimony so severely that they couldn't trust the overall narrative. Same evidence, completely opposite conclusions. So who was right? And here's the question that's going to keep you awake tonight. If our most sophisticated legal systems can't agree on what happened in a small room with DNA evidence, medical documentation, and video footage, what can they agree on? While judges and lawyers debate evidence and precedent, real people are living through this legal nightmare. Anna reported what she says was a sexual assault. She went through medical exams, police interviews, a public trial, and media scrutiny. A court believed her and convicted her attacker. Then the highest court in the region looked at her case and essentially said, "We don't find your testimony reliable enough." Whether you believe her or not, imagine the psychological impact of that sequence of events. Alves spent over a year in prison, paid 150,000 euros in compensation, and lived under the cloud of conviction before being told that conviction was based on unreliable evidence. Whether he's guilty or innocent, that's institutional trauma. And the rest of us? We're watching our systems for determining truth contradict themselves in real time. The Spanish prosecutor has announced they're taking this to the Supreme Court, which means this case, already 3 years old, will drag on for at least another year. But here's what really matters. This case has exposed something deeply uncomfortable about how justice actually works. We want to believe that evidence leads to truth. That DNA doesn't lie. That medical reports are objective. That witness testimony under oath is reliable. This case proves that even when you have all of those things, you can still end up with completely contradictory conclusions. That's not a failure of the system. That's the system working exactly as it should, refusing to convict when evidence conflicts with itself. But it leaves us in a very uncomfortable place. I've been covering true crime for years, and I've never seen a case quite like this one. Usually, when evidence contradicts itself, it's because someone is lying or evidence was contaminated or procedures were botched. But in this case, nobody's claiming the evidence is fake. The DNA analysis was legitimate. The medical reports were accurate. The video footage was authentic. The problem wasn't bad evidence. The problem was that good evidence told multiple stories. And that forces us to confront a question most people don't want to think about. What if truth isn't always knowable? What if sometimes evidence just contradicts itself? What if the most honest thing our justice system can sometimes say is, "We don't know," and "we can't be certain enough to send someone to prison"? Whether Spain's Supreme Court ultimately convicts or acquits Dani Alves almost doesn't matter at this point. The damage to our understanding of how evidence works has already been done. This case has proven that you can have DNA evidence, medical documentation, witness testimony, video footage, and experienced judges, and still end up with no clear answer. That's terrifying if you believe justice should provide certainty. But maybe it's honest if you believe justice should prioritize doubt over conviction when evidence conflicts with itself. Either way, this case is going to be studied in law schools for decades, not as an example of how justice works, but as an example of what happens when our systems for determining truth reach their limits. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. Sometimes there is no comfortable truth. Sometimes evidence contradicts itself. Sometimes the most just outcome is admitting we don't know. That's not the ending we want from our justice system, but might be the ending we need. I want to know what you think about this case. When DNA evidence conflicts with video evidence, which do you trust? When medical reports support witness testimony, but cameras tell a different story, how do you determine truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this case has taught us anything, it's that the conversation about evidence, truth, and justice is far from over. Hit that subscribe button if you want more deep dives into cases that challenge everything we think we know about how justice really works. Because trust me, there are more cases like this than you might think. And if you made it this far, you're part of a community that isn't satisfied with easy answers. That's exactly what we need more of in a world where truth seems increasingly negotiable. Next week, I'm covering a case where 3 different forensic experts reached 3 different conclusions from the same evidence. You're going to want to see that one. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, And remember, sometimes the most important question isn't what happened, but how can we ever really know?